You work 40, 50, sometimes 60 hours a week. You earn a respectable salary. You follow the rules. So why does it feel like you're running on a treadmill that never stops? Why, despite doing everything right, does financial freedom feel further away with each passing year? Here's what your employer will never tell you. The salary isn't designed to make you wealthy. It's designed to make you dependent. The economist Thorstein Veblen understood this over a century ago when he wrote about the kept classes, people who believe they're free because they can choose between brands of the same cage. And the Greek Stoic philosopher Epictetus, who spent years as a slave before gaining his freedom, observed something profound. Most people remain enslaved long after their chains are removed, because the chains were never on their bodies, they were in their minds. This video explores why the traditional salary structure isn't a ladder to prosperity. It's a sophisticated mechanism of economic control. And once you understand how this system operates, you cannot unsee it. The question becomes whether you're willing to act on what you learn. Let's begin. Most people believe the salary trap is about amount. They think, if I just earned 20% more, I'd finally get ahead. So they negotiate raises, they switch jobs, they pursue promotions. And yet, 5 years later, they're in the exact same psychological position, just with a slightly larger number on their paycheck and significantly larger obligations to match it. Here's what most people don't realize. You're not stuck because you earn too little. You're stuck because the salary system itself is designed to expand to consume whatever you earn. The economist Parkinson observed this with his famous law, work expands to fill the time available. But there's a financial corollary that nobody teaches. Expenses expand to consume the income available, and obligations expand to trap the earner. When you accept a salary, you're not just accepting money, you're accepting a framework. That framework comes with invisible constraints that feel like choices. You choose to live near your workplace because commuting 3 hours daily is unsustainable. You choose to buy professional clothing, maintain a certain appearance, own a reliable car. You choose to live in a school district that doesn't fail your children. These aren't choices, these are mandated costs disguised as personal preferences. The real issue is temporal. A salary trades your time for money at a fixed rate. But here's the trap. Time is your only non-renewable resource, and the market has decided its value for you. When you're 25 and energetic, selling 40 hours feels manageable. When you're 45 with aging parents and growing children, those 40 hours become a prison. But by then you've built a lifestyle that requires that income. You've taken the mortgage. You've enrolled the kids in the schools. You've structured your entire existence around that weekly deposit. You're not broken. You're not undisciplined. You're not financially illiterate. You're operating within a system designed to convert your freedom into predictable revenue for others. And the most insidious part, the system convinces you that you're the problem, that if you just budgeted better, saved harder, or earned more, you'd break free. But you can't budget your way out of a structural trap. You can't save your way out of a model designed to extract surplus value from your labor. This operates at 3 levels. Personally, you feel the anxiety, the sense that you're perpetually behind, that retirement is a fantasy, that one medical emergency or job loss would destroy everything. Societally, we've built an entire economy dependent on this model. Corporations need predictable labor costs, banks need reliable mortgage payers, governments need consistent tax revenue. And existentially, we've accepted a philosophical premise that's rarely questioned. That the purpose of your life is to be useful to economic systems, rather than those systems being useful to you. When you accept this premise, you stop asking dangerous questions. When you stop asking questions, you become governable. When you become governable, you become profitable not for yourself, but for the system that employs you. According to Epictetus, freedom isn't about external circumstances. It's about understanding what is and isn't within your control. He He divided all things into two categories, things that are up to us and things that are not up to us. The salary system operates by blurring this distinction. It makes you believe that your income is within your control when it's actually controlled by market forces, corporate budgets, and economic cycles beyond your influence. Simultaneously, it makes you believe your time is not within your control, when time is the only thing you truly possess. This isn't about surface-level issues like spending too much on lattes. This is about the fundamental architecture of exchange. The Stoics understood that slavery wasn't primarily about legal ownership, it was about psychological dependency. You can be legally free but practically enslaved if someone else controls your ability to meet basic needs. And that's precisely what a salary does. It creates a dependency relationship where your survival is contingent on maintaining the employer's approval. The French philosopher Michel Foucault studied how power operates through institutions. He observed that the most effective control isn't through violence or coercion, it's through creating structures that make people govern themselves. You don't need armed guards to keep someone at their desk. You just need a mortgage payment due on the first of the month. You don't need threats to ensure compliance. You just need health insurance tied to employment. The system doesn't force you to stay. It makes leaving feel impossible. Why conventional wisdom fails is simple. It addresses symptoms while ignoring structure. Financial advice tells you to live below your means and invest the difference. This works for a tiny percentage who either start with advantages or win statistical lotteries. For everyone else, it's a mathematical impossibility. When rent consumes 40% of income, groceries another 15, transportation another 10, healthcare another 8, utilities another 6, there's no difference to invest. The conventional wisdom assumes a surplus that doesn't exist for most people. The salary trap succeeds because it offers something genuinely valuable: security. Or rather, the appearance of security. You know when money arrives. You can plan around that rhythm. You can qualify for loans based on provable income. This isn't meaningless. For people living paycheck to paycheck, that predictability is psychologically essential. But here's what the ancient Stoics understood that modern psychology has rediscovered. Humans are remarkably bad at distinguishing between actual security and the feeling of security. A salary feels secure right until the layoff email arrives. It feels stable right until the industry contracts. It feels reliable right until you realize you've spent 20 years building someone else's dream while your own atrophies. The security is real in the short term and illusory in the long term. But by the time you discover the illusion, you've built dependencies that are very real. This is not about demonizing employment. This is about understanding the philosophical structure of economic exchange. When you trade time for money at a fixed rate, you accept a ceiling. That ceiling might be comfortable, might even be luxurious, but it's still a ceiling. And every hour you spend maintaining that arrangement is an hour not spent building alternatives. The system doesn't need to ban entrepreneurship or forbid financial education. It just needs to keep you busy enough, tired enough, and scared enough that you never seriously pursue them. Let's examine the principles that make this trap so effective. Understanding these isn't about motivation, it's about seeing the machine's gears clearly enough that you stop blaming yourself for being caught in them. The first principle, the substitution illusion. The salary system operates by substituting one form of value for another while pretending they're equivalent. Your time, creativity, energy, and potential, these are converted into a number on a check. But the exchange rate is determined entirely by the buyer. Epictetus would recognize this immediately as a category error, mistaking market price for actual worth. A hospital janitor and a hospital administrator contribute vastly different value to human well-being, but their salaries suggest the janitor's time is worth 1/10 of the administrator's. This isn't a reflection of value, it's a reflection of power. Throughout history, craftsmen understood this. Before the Industrial Revolution, a blacksmith, a baker, a carpenter, they owned their means of production and captured the full value of their labor. The factory system changed this by separating workers from ownership. You no longer sold horseshoes, you sold hours of horseshoe making to someone who owned the forge. The modern salary is simply a white-collar version of this same separation. You sell hours of analysis, hours of service, hours of attention to someone who owns the infrastructure. In modern terms, this is why you can generate $1 million in revenue for your company and receive a $60,000 salary. The substitution has already occurred. You've agreed that your contribution, regardless of outcome, equals a predetermined amount. The company captures the upside, you receive stability, and you're supposed to be grateful for it. The second principle, temporal exploitation. A salary exploits the human inability to think long-term. When you're 25, 40 years of work doesn't feel like a sacrifice. It's abstract, distant. By the time you're 55 and your body aches and your passion has calcified into routine, those decades are spent and irretrievable. The system makes a bet. You will trade your youth for a promise of security in old age, and by the time you realize the security was insufficient, it will be too late to choose differently. The Roman Stoic Seneca wrote extensively about time as the ultimate currency. In his essay on the shortness of life, he observes that people are careful with their money but wasteful with their time, despite time being the only thing they can never earn back. The salary system institutionalizes this waste. It normalizes spending the majority of your waking hours building someone else's asset base while your own remains theoretical, perpetually deferred to someday. This reveals itself in phrases people use. After I retire, I'll. Once the kids are grown, I'll. When I have time, I'll. These statements assume that life is divided into earning years and living years. But here's what nobody tells you. The skills you need to live fully atrophy during the earning years. If you spend 40 years taking orders, optimizing small efficiencies, and staying within an established system, you lose the capacity for risk, creativity, and self-direction. Retirement doesn't liberate you. It just removes the excuse you've been using for why you're not already free. The third principle, lifestyle inflation as control mechanism. The system doesn't keep you broke by preventing income growth. It keeps you broke by ensuring that increased income produces increased obligation. This is where the trap becomes self-reinforcing. Every raise enables a slightly better apartment, which requires better furniture, which requires better clothes, which requires better car to maintain the image. You're not ascending, you're expanding your cage. The economist Thorstein Veblen called this conspicuous consumption, purchasing not for use value but for social signaling. But there's a deeper mechanism at work. When your lifestyle inflates to match your income, you lose mobility. You can't take a pay cut to start a business. You can't pause to retrain. You can't risk the entrepreneurial valley because your baseline expenses have risen to consume your baseline income. Banks and lenders understand this perfectly. They use your income to determine borrowing capacity, ensuring you can always access just enough debt to feel prosperous while remaining perpetually indebted. The 30-year mortgage isn't designed to make homeownership accessible. It's designed to ensure 30 years of predictable payment behavior. The car loan, the student loan, the credit line, each is a tether, and each requires maintaining the income stream to avoid catastrophe. In practical terms, this is why a person earning $150,000 often feels as financially strained as someone earning $50,000. The numbers are different, but the structure is identical. Income minus obligatory expenses equals approximately zero, with a small margin for discretionary spending that creates the illusion of prosperity. The fourth principle, the expertise trap. As you progress in a career, you become increasingly specialized. This specialization makes you valuable within a narrow domain and nearly worthless outside it. Long-term thinking produces dangerous questions. What am I building? Who am I becoming? Is this worth 40 years of my finite existence? The Stoics practiced negative visualization. imagining loss to appreciate what they had. But they also practice temporal visualization, imagining themselves at the end of life looking back. From that vantage point, very few people wish they'd spent more time in meetings, answered more emails, or climbed one more rung on someone else's ladder. Yet the salary system's time horizons prevent this perspective until it's too late. This reveals itself in how people discuss careers. They speak of putting in time as if employment is a prison sentence with good behavior credits. They count down to retirement like inmates marking days on a cell wall. The language betrays the reality. This isn't freedom. It's a sentence you're serving voluntarily because the alternatives seem worse. The seventh principle, the scarcity mindset trap. Finally, the salary system operates by creating artificial scarcity. Not scarcity of resources. We live in unprecedented material abundance. Scarcity of time and attention. When you work 40+ hours weekly, commute 10 more, and handle life maintenance another 10, you have perhaps 20 hours of truly discretionary time. You're too exhausted to learn new skills, too time-poor to build alternatives, too mentally depleted to think strategically. This isn't accidental. A well-rested, educated, thoughtful population with surplus time is dangerous to systems that profit from their labor. The goal isn't to work you to death. That would be inefficient. The goal is to work you to capacity. Just productive enough to be valuable, just tired enough to be compliant, just comfortable enough to be afraid of change. The French philosopher André Gorz observed that capitalism requires perpetual economic growth but perpetual psychological scarcity. We must always produce more, but always feel we have less. The salary facilitates this perfectly. It grows just enough to prevent revolution, but never enough to provide actual escape velocity. You're always one promotion away from comfort, one bonus away from security, and therefore always willing to endure one more year, one more cycle, one more quarter. So we return to the question, why does the system keep you broke? Not broke in the sense of penniless, broke in the sense of broken. Broken from ownership of your time, broken from the full value of your contribution, broken from the possibility of building equity in your own life rather than renting your existence from employers, landlords, and creditors. This is not a motivational speech telling you to hustle harder or dream bigger. This is a philosophical explanation of structural dynamics. The salary trap isn't a personal failing, it's a feature of how modern capitalism organizes labor. Understanding this doesn't require you to quit your job tomorrow or embrace some fantasy of laptop entrepreneurship. It requires something more difficult. That system is powerful, entrenched, and sophisticated, but it's not omnipotent. It requires your participation. And participation is a choice, even when the alternatives are uncomfortable. Watch carefully. This insight can change how you live, work, and think, starting today. The cage only holds you as long as you believe the bars are immovable, but the bars were always in your mind. The question is whether you're ready to see them for what they are and act accordingly. Seeing clearly. Because once you see the structure, you stop accepting its premises as natural law. You recognize that the exchange is voluntary, which means it can be renegotiated or exited. You understand that time is your actual wealth, and any system that requires you to spend it unwisely is making you poor regardless of the paycheck amount. You realize that security isn't found in dependency on systems beyond your control. It's found in building multiple streams of value that you own. The question now becomes, what are you building that nobody can take away? What value are you creating that doesn't require permission? What version of freedom are you constructing in the margins of the life the salary affords you? These aren't comfortable questions. They're the questions the system hopes you never ask. Epictetus spent years as a slave before gaining freedom, and he concluded that most free people are more enslaved than he ever was, because they're enslaved by desires, opinions, and dependencies they mistake for necessities. The salary trap succeeds because it makes golden handcuffs feel like accomplishment, but handcuffs remain handcuffs regardless of their material. You are not trapped by inability. You're trapped by a system that profits from your productivity and loses when you redirect it toward yourself.